We still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe.
Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters. It is the professionals, and welcome to Stu, welcome to Mitch. How are you doing, chaps?
Very well.
All good. You're looking rather dazzling in that new top I seen before we came on here. That's the only thing to be excited about at the minute.
Exactly.
give us a description. What's it like, Mitch?
Well, it's like baseball shirt material. It's quite different. The black one's proper cotton, but this one's more like a baseball shirt. And the neck's like the team geist collar off the player's version of the shirt, but it fits spot on. It's really nice.
Nice, good stuff.
The quality's on these original stuff really good, top end.
Well, I jumped in with both feet and joined the gang, so I've got my pair of Adidas trainers. Cost me slightly more than it did you guys, but never mind, I've got them, so that's it, yeah. But let's hope that all of this money that we're ploughing in for merchandise finally comes to fruition with players over the next few days, because there is a bit of movement. Only updates really we have is that Chow for now is on his way for his medical today, and still, Newcastle seem very hopeful about bringing Wisser in. It does seem that the player desperately wants to come to Newcastle to fulfil his dream of playing Champions League football. So I think that's one to watch over the next couple of days. So we will have at least one centre-forward coming in. But I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody else come in. The friendlies tell you where we're lacking. It's up front. We don't score goals, and we need somebody to replace Isak, who was quite clearly not going to play for Newcastle again. If he does, I will be very, very surprised. Anyway, I just want to start with Denise's email. Denise Applewhite, who's in the chat already nice and early. She sent us a nice email. She says, ever the optimist, ever the resist with a slack handful of optimism, she put. Sorry. Our top transfer targets were, number 1, right wing, Alanga. Number 2, goalkeeper, Ramsdale. She put 2 ticks next to them. 3, right centre half. Potentially could be sorted by the time the next couple of days passes. We could have Chow for now in. 4, forward, striker, Wilson replacement, Wisser maybe, she says. 5, midfield. Our 5-year plan so far has brought 2 qualifications to the Champions League, a trophy. We won the Carabao Cup. We achieved Champions League and a trophy last season with our then 11 players, and as we stand today, we've got the same 10 players and a new keeper and a new right winger. So we've got a plus. We still have Isak. So we achieved Champions League and a trophy with those 10 players and a reluctant in-out Isak. I think on that, we are starting this season with a plus platform, just looking for a decent striker. We're still within that 5-year plan. Why are we, if we are, letting Isak and Liverpool drive our striker situation? Why do we not just manage Isak in-house without any outside noise? Maybe we are, and it is just outside noise. We can afford the remaining transfer targets listed above and the top striker without selling Isak. Yes? No? I understand, yes, we can afford it all, and Isak stays. Now, what does that look like? Isak stays, takes a new contract, and we move on, or he stays somewhere in the background while we complete our other transfers and start the season. Appoint our new CEO and director of football when they manage Isak's sale abroad. This is my preferred choice. Whatever others' thoughts on Isak's managing of his want to leave Newcastle United, this is mine. Isak's unhappy with his current salary. He requests more money, gets told yes, and then gets told no. Yes, I'd be upset and angry. He can do one of two things: stay and work harder, or look elsewhere. Whoever Isak did speak to, it looks like in all the one-to-ones he has had with Eddie, Eddie has reported he talks to the lads regularly. Did Isak discuss it with Eddie? I believe Eddie when he said he didn't know, so I can only take from that Isak did not speak to Eddie about being unhappy. I think Isak has lied to us with his love of us and his mimicking of the Geordie accent. I feel a bit betrayed. I shake my head in bewilderment every time I hear Eddie speak of Isak and what is being put in front of Eddie to deal with. I myself have literally requested more money and a promotion and been turned down following laying the evidence of my year's accomplishments. Well, I put my plan together and worked hard to get that same goal the following year. I didn't misbehave as Isak has, or I looked for another job, but I had a get out clause which allowed me to do that. A month's or more notice period. Isak doesn't. We certainly didn't see him knuckle down and prove himself worthy of the extra money last season. Some of it he was missing, and the other he was doing exactly the job he's being paid to do. Not really up and above his role as a striker. Or you disagree with that, then fine. But to get to the end of the season, but either way, you discuss all of the above with your manager, Eddie, in Isak's case. So back to the players. We do have our new signings, and because these are the players working hard for Newcastle United, these are the important players of our squad. We have our original 10 and 2 very good additions. Parker, who I thought looked very good, and I also thought Harrison looked decent. Hall is back and looking really good, and so is Botman. All of this is very positive. Hopefully we get Whistler over the line. This is looking positive, and I understand from Craig Hope's recent report that we may have potential in Samu and Gao for now, and possibly. We started last season with a doubt and a half on, half off Isak, and got a Champions League and a trophy. We start this season with a new keeper and a new right winger, excellent Elanga by the way, and without half an Isak, as we only have had half last season. Let's say if we do get the others over the line, I'd say that's good. Whatever Isak stays or goes abroad or whatever, I cannot bear to say the alternative. We, Newcastle United, move into 25-26 on a positive. I go back to the start of my email. We have a new right winger and a keeper, 2 of our top targets, and a good chance of others coming. Let's get behind our loyal lads and give them the best fan support we have. Denise, thank you for that. Thank you for your email. Don't forget as well, if you want to send an email across to me and the lads, it's nufcmatterspodcast@gmail.com. Okay, Stu, I mean, obviously you've got some points you might want to make about Denise's email, and also your views on what's happened over the last 7 weeks. The last 7 days, sorry. 7 weeks is bad enough as this week, but yeah.
It's a very good email, Denise, and thanks for watching the professionals. See you all next week. She's covered a lot of very good points there. The thing I'm hesitant to be is a hypocrite. You know, that when people are saying that he down tools, I think for all intents and purposes he was carrying an injury, and he did play through the pain barrier. And I think it's become clear why he started the season slowly, because he was promised money and he didn't get it. And then a couple of months into the season, he sees Anthony Gordon get a new contract and is still, don't worry about it. So I get what Denise is saying regarding her own position, contract renewal. You guys know I'm in a similar position myself. I work on an annual contract, which is due up at the end of this month. And I haven't signed a new one. And at this stage, I've got no intention to, because things I was promised during the course of last year hasn't come to fruition. And I feel like, when I blow my own trumpet, I know I'm good at what I do, and I feel I'm being undervalued. So I can relate to Isak on that, but same as Denise, I can have me notice in, or I could work a notice period that's suitable for both and leave on good terms. And that's the key. If I was to leave, it would be on good terms. If I'm offered terms that are suitable to me, then I'll accept them. But again, we're trying to mix real life with the fantasy world of football, which is something difficult to do. I'll be in a position where I would probably just take a couple of months off and have a holiday and then see if I can get a job that would be suitable for me. But Isak can't do that. Now, I'm not going to defend him blindly. I will say he probably has been let down. And I don't buy this that he was down in tools. I really don't. Because I think from his position, and Newcastle United in the Champions League was more likely to be able to attract better players for him to allow his exit than the other way around. So if, let's say, for example, we did get Conference League or Europa League, and then he tried to jump ship, the sort of abuse he's getting now would be probably even more heightened. But I think from his side, it would be like get Champions League. That would make Newcastle theoretically more attractive. And if he's been consistently not lied to, but put to one side, then you can understand it. But what can't be excused is the behaviour, is the advice he's been taken. We know there's been a media frenzy supporting Liverpool, and it seems that they believe it's their entitlement that he should play for them because they want him. I'm more of the opinion that our chairman would be similar to what we've been saying. He's not good. Make him rot, and we can't afford. We can't afford to do that with the PSR cycle. And I think if we are to keep him beyond the window closing, we could see a difference. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if behind the scenes, when there's been this overlapping in training, that's the British senior players. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about like the Burns, the Lascelles, the Trippiers, haven't not physically grabbed him, but they took him at one side and give him a stern talking to about his behaviour. And I think that would have happened, showing his lack of respect to the club, to his colleagues, to the manager that's made him grow. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. And from there, I think if we look at Eddie Howe's last couple of press conferences, he's alluded to that it's created a siege mentality. And that's what got us Champions League the first time. But I think Eddie Howe is aware, as well as we are, as well as the players are, that for us to progress, we do need quality additions, because we can't stand still. We've seen everyone else above us spend tens, hundreds of millions of pounds, and realistically, we're just level at the moment. Now, we've got money to spend. We've shown it. We're trying to spend it. But for me, group harmony will only get you so far. And there's something that we've been consistent on, thankfully, since the last game of the season. And we all had higher expectations that new players would come in quicker and higher class players would be queuing up to join us. And I think we've been humbled, to be fair. I wouldn't say putting back in our box or stuff like that, but it shows there is a hierarchy. And as much as we strive to be part of it, we're not there yet. And that's been shown. No, we have bid for Ekatike. We did bid for, I can't forget his name now, the guy last week. And we've put serious money down. But Sesko, yeah. So you've got to think, if you're a young British lad and someone like, say, Hamburg's trying to buy you, and they finished above Bayern Munich that year, but then Bayern Munich came in, you'd be more inclined to go to Bayern Munich because of the history, the heritage of the club. So I don't blame the players for doing it, and it is frustrating, but I'd rather us go for these players and getting knocked back than not trying to improve at all. But I just don't get, I see their fake injury. I really don't think he's faked any injury. I think he's disillusioned. He's probably been misled, but he's certainly been ill-advised. And there's ways to go about it. Now, we can all be wise after the event, Steve, and I've seen and read and heard a lot of people saying, had he just said at the end of the season, I want to go now, thanks very much, people would be more, yeah, okay with that. But they say that now because of what's happened. The phrase I've used so many times about Isak is the tip of our spear, and he is a genuinely world-class player. And he's he has been our world-class player. But like a lot of foreign players now, they do tend to drift two or 3 years here and there and move around. And I don't think I begrudge him a move, but I will repeat what I've said the last 3 times I've been on the show. Is for me, the way he's conducted himself, the way Liverpool have conducted himself, I'd say anyone but them. And if the Liverpool fans are watching, then good afternoon or good morning to you. So I'll give Mitch a bit because I've got plenty more to say, but I'm aware there's 2 of us there talking, not just me. So I'll pass you on to Mitch.
Go on, Mitch.
It's always easy when you're talking sense, mate, at the end of the day. Look, I think the one thing that's quite clear from Denise's email, and it's something I was going to touch on today, is the shadow that the whole Isak situation is cast across the club. Is not letting anybody see anything positive at the minute. And if you try and talk about positives, you get accused of being a happy clapper or a PIF lick spittle and other such phrases as have been chucked around recently. It's the non-zero sum world where it's everything's black and white, and this is very much a case where there's lots going on. It's revealed to a lot more people who the bad faith and paid actors are in the press. It's given the press an opportunity, and again, this is where some of it feels so self-inflicted in terms of we don't have that leadership team in place to put some of these fires out. And so now the press are running merrily with having a slap at Newcastle United and the owners and making them look a hell of a lot worse than we actually are. And that's, of course, then brings other fans in to join in the parade, and that's fine. You all bring your hats and your banners and your scarves. The season's never been decided in pre-season. Pre-season friendlies and results of pre-season friendlies mean absolutely nothing. They've shown what we know. Between those 2 teams that were put out on Friday and Saturday, there was lots of good things happening on the pitch and lots of good things to see. But what was glaringly missing was a cutting edge at the top end of the pitch. And why is that? Well, we've got a player who's gone on strike, basically. And somebody in Eddie Howe, who normally picks his words exceptionally well with the press, is not holding back. And I think that's really significant. I think that tells the feeling within the club. I think it probably reveals the feeling within the dressing room. And I think that's, for me, is the most important bit. Is that instead of dragging other players down, it sounds like the players have turned around and said, hey, yeah, you know, with where you're against you, on you go. There is one club that can sort this, and it's Liverpool. You put an acceptable amount on the table, and you get the player. And you are trying to get him on the cheap. I would also suggest still, you have tapped him up, and you know you have. You had to put that bid in that you put in the other week before something went wrong for you. Isak's advisors, I mean, it's interesting, his agent, Isak is the jewel in his agent's crown. You know, and it makes you wonder if he's getting some terrible advice from somebody who's not used to dealing with players at that top end. I personally don't see a way back for Isak from this, because he could apologise as much as he likes. Many of our fan base now would never even believe an apology, and so, you know, it makes me, of something that hasn't been of our doing, we're now left with this mess to clear up, and it's overshadowed everything in the pre-season to the point where we just can't see any good at the minute, and it is frustrating. One thing that might come out of this is a little bit of siege mentality, and that's never a bad thing. Never a bad thing, because the way that certain areas of the press have jumped in now, it's quite clear certainly the anti-PIF agenda from many parts of the media is now, it's not even hiding in plain sight. It's very obvious that, and this is where they have to play. Again, there's so many things that they've got to balance. I even saw one guy writing an article about how well PIF's other clubs are not helping Newcastle United, and the fact they're giving money to all their rivals. Well, if they were helping us in a more obvious way, if we'd had 300+ million off of PIF clubs, everybody would be crying about state ownership, collusion, and an uneven playing field. And it's ridiculous. I'd agree with that. Why are we not in for Paqueta? I think now would be the perfect time to have a little bid in for him. I think he'd fit into the squad beautifully with the connections already there. You can't say he doesn't have Premiership experience anymore. He's got all the investigations into illegal betting out of the way. I think it would be a chance for him to blossom and have a fresh start with us. I wouldn't even think twice about dropping a bid into West Ham for him. But there you go. So I think we're dealing with all of this sort of pylon. For me now, if somebody like PSG were prepared to put decent money down for Isak, that would be my preferred option now. Take as much money as we could, but not to Liverpool. They've started all this mess and they've disrupted us as much as they can, and they've created a situation where there's a pylon onto us from other clubs, other fans, the media. So no, I would definitely not like to see him go to Liverpool. I would prefer an option out of the country, because I just don't see a way back for him here.
Yeah,
so I differ to that, I differ to that. I think there is a way back. Maybe it's the heart ruling the head. But you guys know, I've said from day one, I think he stays. Now, that could be for a number of different reasons. It could be Liverpool don't bid enough money that we deem to be suitable. It could be that Isak would have to walk his way back in, as Mitch was talking about there. He would have to, for me, get rid of his agent. And I know Mitch touched on his agent. If anyone wants to Google Alex Isak's agent, he is by far and away the stable star. He's worth probably 3 times more than the next person that agent has. So this is the agent looking and thinking, signing on fees. This is his retirement package. And for whatever reason, he's allowed Isak's allowed him to get in his ear, but that's his job to advise him. But going back to Denise's email, and again, coupling up with what we've said consistent, let's judge the window at the end. Yes, we've got a goalkeeper in, which I think will, as I think I mentioned last week, I can't see us paying £80,000 a week in effect, which is the £4 million loan fee, and then not starting them once the season gets underway. I believe Pope would start, but there'll be a period of getting Ramsdale up to speed with how Eddie Howe wants to play, making him Eddie ready, for want of a better phrase. And then I think we'll see that transition happen. Elanga has potential, he has promise, but he also needs someone across the ball to as well, doesn't he? Then we've got Chow and Wissa, who I'm led to believe from the same source that told me about Elanga that they'll both be Newcastle United players before the season starts, which then it becomes essential if we're touching on Paqueta, but the midfield becomes a priority. That was shown quite clearly over the last 2 days, where you could only play 2 in one game and 2 in the other, because we've only got 4 fit first team midfielders. Now, I don't know if you can ask us later on, Steve, where we think we'll finish as things stand, so I won't give a prediction in case you do. But we are 1 or 2, let's say 2 injuries away from what would be a disastrous season in comparison to last season. Now, again, on our starting 11, I think if Isak was playing, was as good as anyone, we've proven that last year. last season on our day, we could match them all. But unfortunately, we can't go into the season with 11 to 14 first-team players and then padding it out with youths and people who we know really, if we had a clear run PSR-wise, wouldn't be employed by Newcastle United anymore. So for me, the Paqueta, he's the one that I think would be available and would be willing to come. And it's been clear for a while we've needed someone we talked about at the end of last season where we dropped points, which was like your Brightons, your West Ham, Bournemouth, Fulham at home. We lost all of those games. Someone like Paqueta, to even bring him on 20, 30 minutes to go, he's the one that we need to pick the locks, off the defence sitting back. And as Mitch mentioned quite rightly, we know who his best pal is. We know that he'd feel wanted. We know he'd feel loved. And maybe he does need that as well. So we're not sitting here saying Paqueta signing, but if we had a choice, that would be a choice. But I still think we'd need another midfielder after that. Because if the starting three do start, there's every chance before we get to game 10 that at least Bruno or Joe Linton would have had a ban by racking up 5 yellow cards. There's also a chance of a red card. There's chance of injuries. We can't go into this blindly because the games are going to come thick and fast. Last season we had a bit of relief because we didn't have the Europeans. We could spread the workload a bit better. And James Bunn's worked wonders, but he's not a miracle man. When it comes to what's going to happen this season, we do need the depth. So I still think that if we get Wissa in, I'd be surprised if he started on Saturday, but he would be the player that can hold the berth until we either get the top quality centre forward that's required, or Isak then realises, look, I've been a bit foolish, and we come up with a deal where he is paid. And this is what I'm saying about being hypocritical. We're saying he's a world-class striker, but we're not paying him the money. So would that sit well with the rest of the squad? Well, for me, the answer would be, if you're worth 150 million, we'll give you the same. If you're worth 100 million, there's ways around it. But the players want to have the best season ever. And I think what's worrying everyone is we thought that we were going to have a great window after a great season, after our first trophy in so many years. We were going to bounce into this season, into the Champions League with a new format, get through to the next stages, and then take your look from there. It now seems like there's trepidation, and I don't agree with this strike thing. I know Mitch touched on it there, but many other people have talked about Isak going on strike. He hasn't went on strike. If he'd went on strike, he would be suspended, he would be fined, and believe me, that would have found its way into the media. There's no way his agent would have not leaked that he's had a 2-week salary fine. So he's said, I'm willing to train, and I think Eddie Howe's doing the right thing from the way I'm understanding it. I may be wrong, but the way I'm understanding it is, okay, we want you. He's made it clear he wants him to play for Newcastle. He's got his head or his heart wanting to go somewhere else. You're not going to train with this team unless you're going to give us 100%. I'm not going to stop you training. We'll keep you fit. Now, if that's the situation and Liverpool don't cough up the money, then he's going to be our player anyway. So for me, there is a way back, and sometimes we've got to take a little climb down off our high horse, our moral high horse, and think a top class striker like Isak wanting to, and the key word is wanting to play for us and willing to play for us, is an asset to our team. Now, if we can't replace him, and God knows we've tried, it's been publicly the washing, hasn't it? It's been all over the press that we have been trying, and we've even outbid teams. But why should we then just take second best just to grant him his wish? He's contracted and he's our player. So I'm still firmly of the opinion that come the 1st of September, unless Liverpool have paid the money, that would be enough for us to say, go on, then he'll still be a Newcastle player come the 2nd of September. And then we'd be cutting our nose to spite our face, not to try and integrate him. But he has to do some walking back as well. And the first thing he should do, as I said before there, would be to sack his agent. But we need to compromise. We need to give him that get-out clause to a European team, that get-out clause and the extra money. But I might be the minority, but I still want him to stay. And I'm just thinking that iconic photograph from Wembley when he scored the goal and he stood on the advertising boards. You know what I mean? He's in front of his worshipping supporters. It's been damaged, hasn't it? You know, it'll never change the fact that he scored that goal. It'll never change the fact they won the cup. But there's ways to go about things, and he's went about it totally the wrong way. But he's not the first, and I'm sure he won't be the last. It's just because it's Newcastle, and we're not a big club, but the national media want to discuss us every hour of every day of every week. So they need to make the mind up whether we are or whether we're not. But he's went about it the wrong way, but he can go about it the right way. I think we can forgive, but I don't think we'd forget the legendary status that was bestowed upon him, that would have kept him there for years and years to come. Like 20 years later, he comes back, and that's gone now, I think, for me. But I still think we can get what we want out of it, rather than just bow to his pressures. That's just my opinion.
Luke Edwards is reporting that Isak's been told he's not going anywhere. What's your views on that, Mitch?
Somebody just using the word comments, trying to play hardball. He's not in a position to play hardball when he's got 3 years left on his contract.
I wanted Luke Edwards to be right for the first time in a long time.
They could point at Sandro Tonali and say he had a year out of the game just about. Served a suspension, and he come back and he's still a top player. So you know what? We can stick you out for a year if you want. We'll keep paying your wages if you come in to train. That's hardball. This is why I think he's been shockingly advised. He's at the wrong point in his contract to try and do something like this. Because there's still book value there if another year goes past. And so, if he wants to put himself in the football wilderness, he's gone about it the right way. Stu's quite right. The days of players coming and being here for 10 years and what have you, most of your career, etc., etc. It just doesn't happen, and we've got to get used to player trading as part of the game. We've got to get better at player trading. We've got to try and match Chelsea for player trading, because for all the weird accountancy shit they pull, they are, for me, still the best traders in football, non-stop. They're exceptional sellers at the end of the day. And so that fan base must have got used to player churn and getting used to seeing somebody kissing the badge 1 minute and on their way the next. And so it's kind of it's part of the modern game. But I just think if he's playing hardball, he's picked the wrong point in his career to do it. And I could certainly see a situation where the club are quite happy to say, right, you're on your own, so we'll just let you sit and cook. Because
there's another thing.
From a PSR perspective, we're under no obligation to do anything. Probably Jeff, you're right. Anything other than what's in the best interest of the Newcastle United Football Club. It's as simple as that.
There's one thing I want to add that we've never mentioned yet regarding the Isak thing. If he wanted to go that badly, why hasn't he put a transfer request in? And that shows you it's about money. That shows you that whether the agent's saying don't do it. If you want to explore your options, here's your options. You go nowhere unless they pay that. You're our player, you play your game. But also the timing of it. Now, if I might be wrong, but I don't think this reared its ugly head until after the half year. So into July, start of July, just when we come back from pre-season training. And that's when the rumour started. Is there something in his contract where he gets paid extra money? There's a bonus amount, a loyalty bonus paid. And again, this is just supposition, it's not fact. Has he received a loyalty bonus? That's why he didn't push in May or in June. He's waited till July, because if he wanted it, to Liverpool is desperate as the media wanted to believe, he should have been doing this at the start of the window, rather than watch them go and spend the money they spent on Nekatike. So now that's, for me, he hasn't put a transfer request in, so he's still our player. He might not be happy with how things are going, but as we've talked about earlier, not everyone's happy with everything that goes on at work. But the ones with the strong mindset, instead of just bemoaning your bad luck, you roll your sleeves up and you give your best every single day. And personally, that's what I do, and that's what I will be doing. Now, whether that changes my personal circumstances, that's a different matter. But Isak should be, I think for me, he should be more honest with his teammates. He should have been more honest with not so much the supporters, because we'll still support the team, whoever's represent them next year, the year after, 10 years time, whatever. But with Eddie Howe, I think the type of work that's been put in. Now, the fact that Eddie Howe's like, yes, I want him to play, I'd love him to play, I'd love to have him in with the training. But if he's not committed to giving us 100%, we've got a game against Liverpool in the second game of the season, our first home game. The last thing we need is him hanging around the changing room with the negativity, but also listening to tactics. Little things like that can make a big difference in football matches. So that's why he's been isolated, because he's isolated himself. I don't think Newcastle United will break any labour laws or whichever laws that the Liverpool fans are trying to cite that we're breaking. He will be treated with the respect that he's given us, but everything will be done legally. So if he really wants to go, put your transfer request in and do what Sesko did, apparently. Take less money to get your dream move. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion, for what it's worth, is that Isak will not leave Newcastle until after the Liverpool game has been played. I still think he'll leave. Personally, I don't want to see him in a black and white shirt again. I do think he's been extremely disloyal. I said this last year, that there was a lack of passion and emotion from him. I didn't get sucked in by that rubbish at the parade either that I saw on TV, where he was coming out with the YI man and all that stuff. But increasingly that clip of him and Van Dijk speaks volumes. And the fact as well, it was revealed, I think, somebody mentioned it on the show the other night, that he's worked with Slot in the past as well. There's a lot more behind this story, than just Liverpool tapping up this player that we have worshipped for the last couple of years. I can look on the flip side. I can say, yeah, we've had 2 good years. He's scored lots of goals. He's given us a lot of joy, and he scored the winner in the cup final. I would really like to see him go anywhere else but Liverpool, because for me, it's a disgrace the way that this has gone on. I'd love to see him go to another European team. I don't want to see him go to Saudi, because I think it's an absolute nightmare for us financially. If he goes to Saudi, we do lose out on lots of stuff. And I just think ultimately him going across to a PSG or a Barcelona or whatever, and I would that would suit me down the ground. And if he comes to Liverpool a couple of years' time after that, then that's not our problem. But yeah, I'm over this Isak thing. I've already forgotten about him as a Newcastle player. I don't want to see him back in the team. I think he's been extremely disloyal. I think his attitude stinks. And I think, for me, I'd just like to see him gone. And I don't think there's a way back. He certainly, from the stuff, and again, we never reveal lots of things on this channel. Lots of things circulating. I went to the gym this morning, and one of the guys who I'm speaking about Newcastle quite regularly, he said, have you seen this thing? And we've seen it. Yes, we have. I'm not going to go over it. I'm sure lots of you who get WhatsApp messages will have had it. It'll have been forwarded a lot of times. But this, the comment in this particular thing, I'm just be careful how I say this, was quite damning of the whole situation. It was quite damning of Alexander Isak and his performances last season in certain parts of the season. If it is true, it could be completely made up, of course. But you look at it and think that adds up. Yeah, and it's what we've been saying on here for for the last, at the start of the season, he was underperforming. At the back end of the season, he was underperforming. And it would be, for me, I would not be surprised if that thing that's circulating, which I'm sure you've all seen, which I won't go into on air, is true. But for me, it's done. It's dusted. We'll move on. Let's get Wissa in. Let's hopefully get another one in. I said pretty early on, I think we'd get Calvert-Lewin and Wissa once I heard Wissa was linked. I'll go with that, mate. I'd go with that for the start of the season. And hopefully we've got money to spend in January as well, But I agree with Denise. She's starting the show off being very positive with her email. And I'm more coming round to that. And Mitch has also said it as well with, this, people are failing to see the positivity because of this big negative, which is Alexander Isak hanging around and banning him from the changing room. What Stu said, 100% I agree as well. It's the right thing to do. There's nobody bigger than the football club, and that includes Alexander Isak. The lads, 45 minutes in, we'll have a quick break. Go and fill your glasses, lads, and we'll be back after the ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. And don't forget, the fanzine for next season is on sale now. Subscribe by clicking the link. I've just stuck it in the chat and pinned it to the chat. It is £25 for 4 issues. That includes your postage. I think we're up to 62 subscribers now, so we just need another 38 to raise a decent amount for Age UK North Tyneside Dementia. And just speaking of that, thank you to everybody who came along to the Northern Horizon Blake 7 convention. I've done lots of events over the years, but I'd never put on a convention for a TV programme. We did 140 of the 150 tickets. It was a cracking day from 10 o'clock in the morning through till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Exhausting, I've got to be honest. And we had lots of troubles with trains and stuff, people arriving. Even one of the cast members got blue light at the hospital the night before. We still managed to make an appearance for the last hour and a half. But all in all, for a 1970s, 1980s science fiction series, to get them up here and to raise money for Age UK North Tyneside, it was fantastic. I've got to say a big thank you to Michael Murray, big Newcastle fan. He part of the fans liaison committee when I was fans liaison officer. Michael, I learned a few things about people who I've known for years. I didn't realise Michael Murray and Sid Stobart are big Blake 7 fans, so they bought tickets and came. But Michael Murray yesterday bid £1,000 yesterday on the auction. for a very special meeting with 2 of the cast members down in London at a date to be confirmed. But Michael's just paid that money over this morning. So thank you, Michael. Final total will be confirmed. I'll confirm it probably a week today on the next professional show about how much we've raised. But it is going to be a nice little chunk for Age UK, no Tyneside Dementia. But a great day. Met some new people, met some people who I met at the convention last year. Completely different from football, but thank you very much for supporting it. Super 6 is in the hands of Jules. So if you want to join NUFC Matters Super 6 for next season, P5EU29 is the pin for that. And Jules is also running a fantasy league for NUFC Matters again this season. 6EJ7T9 is the access code for that one as well. Jump on board and have some fun with other people from the NUFC Matters community. Martin's back from Turkey. He says, any Newcastle news I've missed? Dear God, Martin. Welcome back, mate. It's still doom and gloom, pal. No fans for him tomorrow. We'll be back a week on Monday. Anthony Stafford, thank you for your donation to the Malverno Fund. He says, seems like a directed hate on us campaign. Any news on the Moan City charges? Well, the only news we've got, Anthony, is no news, because Richard Masters was asked about it live on TV the other week, and he said he couldn't comment. So the answer is no news, unfortunately, on that. And thanks to Jeff, who was in the chat. Good to see you briefly yesterday. He's chucked in £25 to the Malverno Fund as well. So I think the Malverno Fund might get spent on a European journey this year, Jeff. I think we're all hoping to at least get to see each other at a Champions League journey of some type this year. So that's the plan, I think, for the next trip. I'll have to buy the pizzas in Italy, hopefully, as well, instead of Portofino's. John Askew, good morning. He always asks a good question. Are there influential people at the club holding us back? The Isak to Liverpool business will only have one winner and one loser. Why should we facilitate such a thing? Is it down to maybe people who were at the club? We've made a lot of things, talking about here, Stu, about a lack of a CEO, a lack of a sporting director. But are there influential people at the club holding us back? It's an interesting question.
Well, we couldn't say anything with fact, could we? So we've got to be careful how we word that. But I know on here and on the Migos, we've given our own opinions several times on what we believe has happened. But there is a gap, and now for me, people seem to have someone to blame. And I'm as guilty of it as anyone is pointing my fingers towards Peter Silverstone, but I say that with justification, and I'll explain why I think he could do more to help the club in the situation it's currently in. But Andy Howe seems to be getting a lot of grief. And if you look at his track record and who he's scouted, etc., he's very well thought of in the business. But then you have sensationalism headlines saying things like it's nepotism or he's only got the same thing as he's got the job because of his uncle, etc. He's very, very good at his job, but his job's to scout. It's not to sign players. And there's a lot of people now. It's got this. We've gave the analogy before about under Mike Ashley we were a ghost ship, and then now it's the good ship Newcastle. But it seems to be it's leaking and it's all hands to the pump, where people are trying to multitask too much and spreading themselves too thin. But again, if we do get the 2 in that are expected to come in this week, that'll be 4 additions. We're still minus squad players from what we started last season with to going into this season, but we've still got 3 weeks left to add to it. So I think with those 2, there should be at least another 2 quality signings. And as I touched on just before there, I would be targeting the midfield area. But who do we blame at the club? I think there's been a lot of people who have flexed their muscles to get themselves into certain positions. And once they've got in that position and eliminated the so-called opposition, they don't know actually what to do. Or they've sat back on the laurels and thought, well, that's me now. I'm all high, mate. You get the cigars out, get your feet up on the table and everything else, rather than lead by example. And that's what this club's needed. It needs someone. It doesn't even have to be the public figure that we're all crying out for, because when the team's doing well, we don't care what we hear from upstairs. It's when the team's doing bad, that's when it becomes an issue. but there's no one there to speak. And that's where I feel sorry for Eddie Howe when he's like, well, that's not my decision. Has any of them got the gumption, should we say, to say, well, whose decision is it? Who is actually making these calls? Because that's not being asked to him. And the fact that we've got a part owner in Jamie Rubin flying across to Germany, he was instrumental in the Langer signings as well. Since when has he been a director of football negotiating contracts? That's not his role either. But it tells you that we have people missing. But had we brought in a director of football in 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, would this mess have been any different? Probably not. But what would have been just as loud was here we go again. There's last season when Mitchell coming halfway through the window with his own ideas, and which were different to the manager's ideas. And I think that we will quite clearly get a new director of football. But for me, the sensible thing would be to, once the window's closed, and just get these extra players in. Now, regarding the CEO, that for me is, I don't want to be too dramatic by saying unforgivable, but for me, it's been overlooked, shall we say. That is, someone needs to know who's at the top. We all know Yasser Ramayan's the main man, but he hasn't got the time to commit to Newcastle 24/7. And at the moment, this club needs someone hands-on 24/7 who can call the shots, who will make the difficult decisions, and who will actually, as I said, lead by example, but also guide people and reinforce other people into what their actual roles are. And it's such an easy fix as well. I don't think the world is bereft of quality CEOs who would jump at the chance to be paid by the Public Investment Fund. And with the project that we've got, and we can get sidetracked, we can look with pessimism towards the new season, but we are still in a much lower position to where we were 3 or 4 years ago. And I don't want to come back, how often we're going to say that. Is it going to be 5 years? Where were we 5 years ago? Where were we 6 years ago? We have made huge strides, and it seems to have just plateaued out at the moment. But that doesn't mean we can't kick on and go again. And I think if you listen to those who are in position at the club, such as the manager and the chairman, they have never wavered from their ideology of wanting to improve Newcastle United. And for that, we should be grateful, but they need help. And that's the thing. So, I mean, I don't want to go into too much regarding who's in what position and why is that person not there, but I think I've covered most things as diplomatically as I possibly could.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, yeah, you got the question, Mitch, and I know you'll probably answer it in a similar kind of way, but...
Yeah, I mean, look, we've talked about this often and at length over the last, certainly 9 months. The frustration for me seems to be the seeming lack of urgency to do anything about the Darren Neal's situation and his replacement. It just, I don't get why everything seems to have moved at a glacial pace in that respect. Even to have somebody running alongside him as a transition in a handover phase would have been useful. And similarly, the sporting director situation, are we in the situation with Mitchell going because of frustration and petulance at the end of the season, boiling over and leading to somebody going? What's the background to it? It all seems a little bit odd. And what it's left, and we've talked about this a lot, is a vacuum. A vacuum that gets filled with noise, a vacuum that we, as a result, have zero control over, and a vacuum where there's seemingly no leadership and no firm. And a lot of these things that are overshadowing and going on, I'm quite sure could have been handled much differently by the club, with the right people in place, making the right statements at the right time, and calming the masses, deflecting some of the problems. Though it would seem the Isak situation has been coming rather like it's like when you're in a tunnel and it's not the light at the end of the tunnel, it's a train coming the other way to flatten you. That seemingly an exceptionally difficult situation to handle. But by God, I think it would have been better if we'd had some vocal and strong leadership in place during this time. I think it certainly would have calmed some of the swell. Eddie gets left in a situation where he's answering questions way above his pay grade. The players have been put in a situation when they got off the plane in Singapore, answering questions that I really feel was unfair to put them in front of the press at that time with what was going on. And of course they were going to be asked about Isak. And I think the players handled themselves professionally and very well. And where does that come from? The leadership above them, the man who manages them. And so there seems to be, it would be nice to have that kind of leadership adjacent to and above Eddie, to bridge the gap to the board and the chairman, and have that kind of structure that offers direction, that offers sometimes a little bit of light in the darkness, and could chuck the fan base a bone. It would shut up a lot of the stuff. You know, it's interesting, you know, the people who are concerned about PIF's interest, and, oh, well, we haven't had an update on the stadium. No, we haven't. But Man United have talked non-stop about their stadium, and where's that going at the minute? That looks like it's in trouble again, and Ratcliffe's asking for more public money to buy land that he doesn't want to buy, or probably as a club they can't afford, because the holding company's carrying all that loss to allow the PSR wangle, that is the football club, being able to get away with it, while the losses are held outside of the football club. Either way, I would far rather hear nothing about our stadium plans until we know we're good to go and we've got concrete things to talk about, rather than have a bloody artist's image of what's effectively a grand circus marquee in the middle of Manchester, and it's going nowhere, it seems. That you see is the kind of stuff that should be being talked about in the media, but isn't. And so that's my ultimate frustration with it all, is I think with some better and stronger leadership in place in those positions right now, some of the problems I think would feel less like problems and more like situations with forthcoming solutions.
Okay, lots of questions coming in. Big thank you to everybody watching, by the way. You know, we never take it for granted. 2,200 of you watching live, and that means there's quite a few of you watching on X. So please jump over onto YouTube, search NUFC Matters, and hit the subscribe button. It's free, and we do 7 shows a week. Scott says, why can't we just do with Isak like Spurs did with Harry Kane? If we don't get enough money for you, you're not leaving. He's contracted to us for 3 more years. Buy Wissett and integrate Isak back. Talked about that, Scott, but it's a good point. He also says, do you think owners now see that APT has to be dealt with by any means necessary, like fans taking Premier League to court, so that we aren't in this situation every year regarding players' salaries and fees? Concentrate on that last bit, Stu, because it's you know, we've had Keith on the show you know, last week or the week before, and we talked about that. But yeah, it does feel as if we're starting to almost like hit this kind of, you know, this ceiling now, where Newcastle are going to be forced to go down the left road or the right road. You know, because ultimately it does almost feel as if we're in an impossible situation now, you know, which we can't get out of, and something does need to be done.
Yeah, this will always leave more questions than answers, Steve. For me, it's quite reminiscent if we go back a generation and you're trying to explain, because I know women's football is quite popular now, and I'm probably going to get branded as sexist for this, but if you go back 30 odd years ago and you're courting and you're trying to explain the offside rule to your girlfriend, you know, and you've got the pepper pots and everything else, and with the way the financial fair play works is, or well, we know why it's working and who it's working for, but it's, for me, it strangles ambition. Now, if, as Mitch talked about Manchester United there, we know that their debt is close to £1 billion, and yet they can still go and lash out money. So is there a way that we just end up getting ourselves into debt? Would we still be allowed it? But you're still then capped by what you can generate. But you can only generate by being successful. So the only way you can be successful is spend money. But if you're capped on how much money you spend, and the ones above you can always spend more, it's just filters down to what it'll end up being. The Premier League will be too predictable, and that would be dangerous for the sport itself. And I go back to my childhood. You could have 5, 6, 7 teams that could win the league. Whoever had the best season that year won the league. And invariably, there's been times of certain clubs' dominance, but it's been cyclic, hasn't it, or cyclic? I think is the correct way of pronouncing it. Where it was Liverpool, then it was Manchester United, then it was Chelsea, then Manchester City. But now it seems like the top 4 from last season will be the top 4 next season. And that's why I've got that caption there, 5th is a new first. I cannot see anyone for the foreseeable future breaking into that top 4. But that doesn't mean that money buys you success, but it gives you a chance to. Now, there was a figure that came out earlier this week. This might answer some people's questions when they're talking about Chelsea. How can they keep spending? What did you see that, Mitch? The figure that Chelsea had raised in the last 3 years, I think it was over £250 million. So over £250 million on homegrown players. So if you amateurize that, they can spend $1 billion, and they are generating money. But they have got themselves into a position where they were unchallenged to do that. And I think was it Steve Hasty that said yesterday in our group, or I read it somewhere. No, it wasn't. He put it in the group, but it was someone else. I think it was Toon Travels that posted about Chelsea. In the early start of the Premier League, that had figures of 8,000 for Premier League games. They averaged 20,000. They'd only won about 7 trophies in their history. But now they can spend freely and willingly because they were allowed to do that at that stage. So why are other people not allowed to spend it? And I think that's the frustration with most. And if you're at the very top, of course, you don't want to be challenged. Of course, you want the status quo to remain the same. But for me, for the good of the sport, and maybe we are biased sitting here as Newcastle fans, but for the good of the sport, why can't people spend money? If they're willing to put the money in and it's sustainable, why can't they spend it? And we know, for those who listen to Talk Sport, Simon Jordan, he's done a full 180. He was very, very much in favour of the PSR, financial fair play rules, at the start of our takeover process. But now we've seen how it's impacted not just Newcastle, but the Aston Villas, the Forest, Everton to a lesser extent, West Ham. These are the clubs who have ambition. But if your ambition's stifled, it becomes, what's the point? What's the point if you can't? And I will reiterate, that's why I said 5th is the new first. Because those 4 have spent over £1 billion between them, probably more than the rest of the league combined. How is that possible to make a level playing field if that can't change? And that's the difference. So that's what I want to say regarding the rules being tampered with and then needs to be changed and challenged. But the last thing before we go to Mitch is, I've seen a lot of people talk about PIF, why they're buying that player, why they're buying that player. And again, sometimes you've got to go into history to explain the present and then make the future better. But if you go back to, and I'm going to talk shops now, Topman, Burton's, Topshop, Boots, Halfords, they all had the same order. But does that mean Topman couldn't put a 10% discount on shirts because it would affect Topshop? You know what I mean? They've all got their own businesses to run. Now, this, to simplify even further, there's a couple of Saudi teams in for Wissa. Should we then stand back and say, no, don't sign them because we want them? It's fair game. Although there is one mothership of a company, for want of a better phrase, they're all individual football clubs in their own right, wanting to better themselves. So I know there's plenty of Liverpool fans in the chat. They didn't seem to complain when they got over £40 million for someone on the wrong side of 30 in Fabinho. It's not the only player that they've sold to Saudi. They're happy to take the money then, but as long as it's not getting spent on us, And this is where you've got the duplicity of it. You know, it's the double standards. You have to either say Saudi's allowed to invest in the league or they're not. And I have to be careful not to quote this, but I was reliably informed that after the Ashraf thing, it was stated that they didn't want to do business with Man United. That was across all platforms of PAF's football teams. But that's not contracted because that wouldn't be right. But since then, they haven't signed anyone. But they're still looking very close to buy someone from Liverpool. Now, the conspiracy theorists say, well, that's they've got money to buy Isak. They've got money to buy Isak. But again, simplifying things, and I've said this on so many occasions, for a transfer to happen, you need a willing buyer, a willing seller, and a willing player. At the moment, they've only got 2 out of 3. And if we're not willing to sell, and we've got the contract for 3 years, he's not going. The onus is on Liverpool or whoever else wants to buy any of our players to give us an offer where we think, yeah, that meets the value that we've got for that player. And irrespective of them coming back, well, you're not paying enough, that's none of your business. He signed a contract. Our business is our business. So it's great that you want one of our players, and it's great that we're in a position where some of the top teams in the world want our players. But if we can't pay them what you can pay them, how is that fair? If the rules don't let us pay these people, if we can't go and buy the people that you can go and buy, how can we ever catch up? And this is the bigger picture. This is things that's never, ever getting magnified by the press. But they will come up with stories that Isak's on strike. They will go on that he's desperate to get to Liverpool. And we should be so grateful. We should actually let them have him. They're doing us a favour. It's a phrase better. Big dog's cock. There we go. There's your 3 words for the day.
I love it. Rich.
Yeah, I mean, we've reached this strange middle ground where we're ready to kick on to the next level. But there are so many things acting as drug shoots and holding them back. Villa, to an extent, are in the same situation. They've got owners who are prepared to pump money in by any means they can, but they're held back by certain rules, and they've had to sell players. They've had to do the whole juggling with the women's team. Everton will be the next one doing it, and to a greater or lesser extent, them and West Ham will be that similar tier where they could potentially kick on, but they can't. It's exceptionally frustrating. Will that stir the owners to do something? Well, we've been saying that for a while. And unless there's lots of things happening behind the scenes we don't know about, it doesn't look like it. There's still nobody in position at the club who could carry something like the weight of a fan-type action that the club could fund to the owners. Again, lacking a CEO and somebody who's in touch with the fan base. You know, the communications within the club is one of the things we've been quite critical of. Because, let's be honest, they've not been very good at it in many levels and ways. But we're at this sort of glass ceiling that we've got to try and find a way to break it. And yes, once we're clearer on things like APT, I'm sure there's all sorts could come in and make it much easier. But it's none of that is in our control, and that's the frustration. It's sort of we're dealing with rules, hastily amended rules at times when they get wind that we would want to do something, or there's a risk that we might be able to do something, and that all just leaves that bitter taste that we currently have with the Premier League and with other clubs. There's certainly other clubs are very happy to act together and then try and gerrymander votes off of other clubs to make sure they get their own way every time. I would hope that the owners do feel disrespected and slighted, not just by the Premier League, but by other clubs, by the press, by Alexander Isak, by the whole situation. However, again, I've said it earlier and I'll say it again now, had we had the right people in place over the last 8-9 months, would it have gone a different way? Or would the impact have been slightly less? It's speculation, but could it have been worse? You know?
Yeah. I've got a question here, which we're going to probably end up finishing the show with, and it's from T-Tank saying, if Paqueta came, who would the panel leave out of the starting 11? Because he doesn't, for me, at this moment. I don't think Paqueta would sit on the bench too long. It's a good question. It's there, it's hypothetical because, we're not really being massively linked with him. It's one which we could look out for. I mean, I'll widen it as well, so we're not just focusing on that. But, is it right? I feel we probably need somebody to replace Longstaff. But we still needed a creative. We needed a creative. We needed like that lock picker, as we've described it in the past, like a Peter Beardsley who can thread a pass, or a Lee Clark who was very good at threading a pass. But we also need like a midfield general, somebody who's like a Gary Speed who can do the dirty work, but also pitch in with quite a few goals, 10 goals in a season. So, I mean, if Paqueta came in, who would you leave out of those, of the infamous three, Tonali, Bruno and Joe Linton? And what do you think we need in that midfield, Stu?
I wouldn't leave any of them out. I think now more than ever, it is a squad game. And I just talked about there'll be injuries, there'll be suspensions, there'll be what was the phrase we used last year? Horses for courses, wouldn't it? Where you've got certain games where you think, right, you're not playing for that reason, and you're in for this reason. And having the flexibility and the options to do that will take us to another level. We can't look at just a starting 11 in this isolation, but that's where we are at the moment, simply because we've got a very good starting 11, all barring the missing centre forward. We have a very good starting 11, and that's probably how we've missed out on some of the targets at the start of the year. A couple of them went to Chelsea because they think, well, yeah, I like the idea of going to Newcastle, but I don't want to be playing second fiddle to Alexander Isak. So now they're probably, at least one of them, the lad from Ipswich, I'm sure he'd be thinking, if I'd hung on a bit, I could have got Newcastle and been starting. But it has to be a squad game. And we'll use Paqueta because that was in the question. He would start, let's say we have 55 to 60 games. If you, between the four of them, they'll probably start at least 30 to 40 games each. There's ways around it to manage it. But then the players would understand that the squad, they're not being dropped because, imagine if you were Tonali, right, you're out the team because we think Sean Longstaff's better than you. That's, with the greatest respect in the world to Sean Longstaff, he'd be the first to admit he's not as good as Tonali. And the same would go for Miley to Bruno at this current stage. Same with Willock to Joe Linton. That's where we were last year. So the main three pick themselves. But if we have more competition for places, and this is where the quality over quantity is essential going into the last few weeks of the window. We've had it with the left wing. We've got two really good left wingers with Gordon and with Barnes. And they'll both know that they'll never be, one might play more than the other, but they're not going to be playing every single game. And that's for the greater good of the team, but also for the individual. It reduces the chance of injuries. Certain players will be able to impact different games at different times. If we looked how we managed bring them up again, Isak and Wilson, that time when Wilson was fit, one would start one game, 60 minutes, 30 minutes, swap them over, and then rotate it like that. And they got the best out of both of them. There was score on average 2 goals a game between them for that, I think it was 10 or 12 game period leading up to us getting into the Champions League the first time round. So adding players, it doesn't mean you have to drop players. Now, even if we brought someone in now, we know that they're not going to go straight into the team midfield-wise anyway, because none of them did. Bruno didn't. You know, so Tonali didn't. Well, he actually did, but then he was out. But we've got to be more open to having better players and not being fixated on the starting 11. We've got to get ourselves a position where we've got 18 to 19 quality players backed up by potentially very good youngsters. But again, by buying these quality players, they need to pay the salaries. And that's going back to the previous question. So to answer it, to summarise, would Paqueta replace someone? Not instantly, no, but would he be used? Yes. So it's easy to say, well, we'll drop Bruno, or no, we can't because he plays with them. We'll drop Tonali, and they'll all rotate. And this is what Eddie Howe has been very, very good at. He's bought players who can play more than one position and play them well. Hence the reason that Gordon's likely to start next week up front. So Paqueta wouldn't just come and replace someone, but he'd get plenty of game time. If you're good enough, you'll get your game time.
Okay, thoughts on Paqueta, and that, you know, just the wider picture on the midfield.
He's somebody who last season I saw quite a bit of. I think a combination of strange chance and having a mutual friend with Stu, who's a West Ham fan. I think I ended up watching a few West Ham games last season.
Oh, was it massive?
Well, yeah, it was massive. But I saw him play in sort of a deeper midfield role, in a more advanced midfield role, and on both wings. And he's got that versatility. And that's the kind of player I would have in my squad in a heartbeat. Will he start every game? No. Will he start a good number of games? Absolutely. Because we've got to manage minutes, we've got to rotate the squad, we've got 4 competitions to play in. There's plenty of opportunities for players to get minutes. And when you've got somebody who can play in a number of positions, he's more likely to get minutes, but not necessarily hold a single role down. At one time, that was a curse for a player. Think Aaron Hughes, think Steve Watson, who probably both should have played more games for Newcastle United than they did, but they were always on the bench because of their versatility. Nowadays, in the modern game, they'd probably see a hell of a lot more minutes on the pitch because of rotation and because of their versatility. And that's why I would absolutely have no qualms adding Paqueta to our squad, but also that relationship that he clearly has with Bruno, it adds a bit more effervescence into a dressing room that probably could do with a little bit extra on the back of what the club has been dealing with over the last, over the summer.
Joe Linton is a makeshift striker. That was an interesting suggestion I've just seen in the chat there. You know, to get us through until we get somebody through the doors. What are your thoughts on that, lads? Dear me, well, that's it all from you. Okay, we have got time to squeeze another one in, and let's. I did want to get another email in actually, which was sent yesterday. It was quite a small one, so I can probably squeeze it in. Let's find it here. Big thanks everyone tuned in. Over 2,700 tuned in now. So a big thank you to you for watching. Neil Calvert sent us one. Just a quick word on our current situation. Perspective is a great thing. Some of our fan base, especially NUFC content creators, seem to have lost their heads a little bit when it comes to our recent transfer activity. Personally, while I feel some of the players we're bidding for are good players, they're not necessarily the right fit for our club. I would prefer that we were looking at the level below, up and coming like we did with Bruno, Botman, etc. I don't think that not having a DOF or a CEO in place is hinders as much as people make out. Let's remember Trippier, Bruno, Wood, Byrne, Botman were all identified and signed before Ashworth came on board. Plus, there wasn't the leaks of what transfers we were going after either. Then, on a broader note, we've got to remember we've come from in little under 4 years. Surviving relegation, qualifying for Champions League twice, 2 cup finals, and won our first domestic trophy in 70 years. There's a lot to be happy about, in my opinion. While this pre-season hasn't been great, I think the team will need our support even more this campaign. So we need to get behind Eddie and the boys to continue our journey to becoming a club that's there or thereabouts, challenging for trophies every season. Whatever the club or Eddie decides to do with Isak, we must back him and give the team our full support. No player's bigger than the club. I've seen McDonald, Waddle, Beardsley, Gascoigne, Cole and Ferdinand, to name a few, leave our club over the years. But the club survived and we will again. Great show, lads. Keep up the good work. Keep being the unofficial voice of the fans. Away the lads. Thank you, Neil Calvert. And the one that I got from Ian MacDonald, just a quick observation of how, in my opinion, the PSR rules are catering to the top six, and the gap between the six is only going to get bigger. We've seen in recent years how many players Chelsea have brought in, and you can see the rest of the top six are starting to follow this pattern. It's like they're stockpiling all the better players, preventing anyone else out of the top six competing against them. So in reality, the Premier League have actually created their own Super League, says Ian MacDonald. Focus on that one. It's a good one, that, Stu.
Yeah, I think I touched on it just before there. It's been brought, well, it's quite clear now that there is the haves and have-nots. And unfortunately, as I said, we have to just suck it up and think, okay, we'll always be the have-nots, and the best we can hope for is fifth, and hope that gets us a Champions League place on the coefficient. That's not what football's about. You know, football's about dreaming, or at least aspiring to get better. But if you cut off out the knees, you're not going to be able to win a 100-meter race, are you? Irrespective of how fast you think you are, you're not going to win it. So the Chelsea model, it's very easy to criticise, but they've done everything within the rules, and to a point they should be admired. Now, the stockpiling of players allows them to then sell like what they've sold, as we just talked about, £250 million worth of players, homegrown players in the last 3 years. They will make mistakes. Remember, they sold Salah cheaply. They sold Kevin De Bruyne cheaply. But when you have that much, you can think, okay, well, Man City did it, but they got rid of Palmer. These two now will become the dominant force of football unless things change, because they've been allowed to do it. And the rules now, how do I get this across? There's those at the top that don't want to challenge. There's those in the middle section that are just comfortable taking the handouts every year, knowing they'll never be able to challenge anyway due to the size of the club, fan base wise, etc. And then there's 4 leagues. There's the top, there's those aspiring to be there, there's those that just accepting of the way things are and happy to take the big bucks every year that the Premier League gives them. And then there's those at the bottom who are just hopeful to finish 17th. Now, we've moved from 17th to the next level, but with the ceiling's there now, we can't go into that top level consistently unless the rules change. Forest did it for 1 season, but they had to break the rules to do it. They had to get docked points to do it, and I don't think anyone can expect Forest to replicate this coming season what they did last season. But are they willing to do it? Are they wanting to do it? Are they capable of doing it? Yes. Are they allowed to do it? No. And that's the thing. They'll just forever be able to pick off the best players. Now, maybe Liverpool did underestimate the resolve of Newcastle United and whoever is left in the boardroom of the ownership, and thinking, no, we want to compete with you. We want to challenge you with you. We're not going to feed you. And we're not going to roll over and let you just take whoever you want and be grateful for it. But there has to be systematic changes, or for me, the game is just going to drift into boredom, and it will become Americanized, where you have a great idea at the start of the season. I know Mitch knows far more about the NFL than me, but there's how many different divisions, Mitch? Is there 12 different divisions? No, 6 different divisions, isn't it?
8.
There's 8. And I guarantee you, before the season starts, you could nigh on pick who's going to finish top in each of the 8. Very rarely is the one that overcomes, because the status quo there is there, but people are happy with that. They're comfortable with it. That doesn't mean that we should. And it's only going to be a matter of time before I think the football fan will revolt. And I know Keith spoke about it at great length and excellently last week, but something has to change. Otherwise, people just become bored, and it'll get to the situation. The word apathy gets thrown about. But if you remember when Mike Ashley first come over, and we thought, oh, we've got a good one here, and then he threw his toys at the pram and started sulking, there was an apathy where people think, well, I'm not going to go. What's the point? They're not even trying to get better. We've got owners who want to get better and are capable of getting better, but at the moment have been restricted from being better. And that's the difference. But you've seen they had to give tickets away because the Premier League wanted full stadiums. Now, if it comes to season after season after season, the status quo, you know, roughly when the season starts, you're going to finish between 5th and 8th. You're going to finish between 9th and 12th. You're going to finish between 13th and 17th. You're going to finish, 13th and 16th. You're going to finish between 17th and 20th. Then it becomes boring. And people look for it. No one wants boring. Sport is an escape from your normal everyday life. You want excitement. You want to better yourself. You want to hope. You want to dream. But if you know before the ball's kicked roughly where you're going to finish, with all the wind in the world, you'll lose supporters. And if you lose supporters, the league loses its novelty. Then the bubble bursts. And for me, I think it's going to come a lot quicker than what people think, unless there's big changes. Now, everyone's hoping for this APT ruling with Manchester City. I guarantee if it goes against Manchester City, they will challenge it. And then we'll have to wait another 12 months, another 18 months. It's the rulings that keeps talking about that needs to be challenged. Or the clubs actually grow up here and vote 40-6 in favour of changes and allow people to grow, allow people to spend money. Because if you've got clubs that are seriously in debt, still allowed to spend money, where clubs who have got zero debt aren't allowed to spend money, there's something totally wrong with the game.
Have we created, or have they inadvertently created a new Super League, Mitch?
Yeah.
No, I tell you what they're trying to do. They're trying to emulate Chelsea's ability to sell. Because they've worked out that, take all the clever accounting out of it, it's that ability to sell at good prices is what's propping up Chelsea's ability to spend. 281 million on homegrown players. That's you know, an outrageous number. But that's real transfers. And if you look at is their sale list something like 17 long? It's still at the minute, there's still 17 players they're looking to move on. And they'll get some good money for some of those players. And they take this sort of scattergun approach. Right, we'll sign 5, and if one works out, we'll sell the other 4, and we'll make some money off it. And that's the happy days. And then they do all the clever accounting in and around and on top of all of that. But I think that's what the other clubs are trying to emulate. I don't think they're creating the Super League as such. What they want to do is protect their spending power by some other means, because they know all the little accounting tactics, like selling the women's team to a holding company and what have you, really are short-term fixes that kick the can down the road. And the only thing that resolves it is, one, ability to generate income through sponsorships and other means, but very importantly, sales. And you don't get good money for cart horses. You get good money for decent players. So you want to snap those young, decent players up when you can, in the hope that maybe, like I say, 1 out of 5 is a great addition to your squad for 2 or 3 years and brings success to the club. But you still then have another 4 who you can sell on somewhere down the line, make good money and profit, and that balances the PSR books before you start even adding the accounting stuff in or sponsorships in and things like that. And I think that's what they're trying to emulate.
Okay, good stuff. Great 90 minutes. It always flies over when we're having a bit of a natter. Big thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you to the moderators. How many have we got watching? 2,900 of you watching this morning. Thank you. As I said, please jump on. I know, search NUFC Matters on YouTube and hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week. No live shows now until a week on Sunday. I am off on a well-deserved break before I come back refreshed and ready for the new season. Let's hope we've got a few new bodies in by the time we resume normal service doing lives. But thank you to Stu, thank you to Mitch, thank you at home. Take care. Have a great Sunday afternoon, whatever you're doing. Take care, lads.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.